What is going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me again today on the Musket Fire YouTube channel, where we are starting streams, videos, short content. That's the stuff that you guys are eating up. And today I am not by myself. So I'm going to have a conversation with somebody today, which is super exciting. He is a featured columnist for PatsFans.com covering the Patriots. And of course, he has his own podcast that he co-hosts, the Patriots 4th and 2 podcast. This is Derek Havens. What is up, my friend?
Hey, Sarah. How are you doing?
I am so good. How are you?
I'm pumped. I'm excited to have this conversation. You know, you and I have had a lot of offline conversations. I'm excited to go ahead and discuss some of the topics we talked pre-show, and I think the Patriots are in a really fun spot right now. A lot of exciting things happening. So, yeah, I know it's only May, but I'm excited. I'm excited for the direction they're heading right now.
I think that I'm more excited about them being in this position right now than I was like a year ago. I think last year we were kind of trying to be optimistic about what the possible season could be, but I think it's a lot more exciting, even if most people are saying they're barely going to win 5 games, whatever it is. I'm like, I don't care. It's a new era. It's exciting to talk about. And because of that, there's so much we can talk about, but let's talk about, you mentioned May. So let's talk about Drake.
That was kind of tongue-in-cheek. I'm glad you picked that up.
Yes. So he's been probably at the forefront of most conversations with the Patriots since he was drafted, for good reason, of course. But there's a lot of speculation about if he's going to start his rookie year, and people have a lot of takes on that, especially after seeing the schedule. I think they're ranked, what was it? I think it was within the top 10 for strength of schedule, which
it's like 4, on balance.
Yeah. And of course you
tough.
can take that with a grain of salt. You could, there are people who live and die by it, and there are people who ignore it. But because they have Jacoby Brissett, who was brought in presumably to be the bridge quarterback, most people assume he is going to be the starter, unless for some reason Drake Maye just completely shows out this summer and wins the job. So assuming we don't know who's going to be the starter, do you think Drake Maye could start the season, or do you think that he'll get a start maybe like midway through? Do you think he'll play at all as a rookie?
He definitely will play. I feel very confident in that. I think if he starts, let's work backwards. So if he starts week 1, I take it as a really great sign, because I think that the way they structured how they were building the team, they meaning Elliott Wolf, Gerard Mayo, the rest of the front office, the way I feel like they structured the team is like they knew that it was going to be a slow kind of rise. And I can tell you with confidence, they told every free agent at the beginning of March that they were going to sign a veteran quarterback, and then they were going to draft a quarterback at 3 overall. That's what they were telling players from the legal tampering period, basically from the scouting combine on. And then they sold, then they signed, Jacoby to a 1-year, $8 million deal, and they drafted Drake Maye 3 overall. So that was, they followed kind of along. They've been very transparent in what their plans are and how they're kind of attacking things. And we can get to that later. But staying on the quarterback specifically, I think that it would be a great sign for Drake if he was able to start week 1, because I know that the guys who are in place right now wouldn't put him in that position if they didn't feel super confident in where he was. Now there's a lot of pressure not on him to start week 1. I think it'll be probably closer to 4 to 8 starts, depending on how the season goes, and we'll get to that as well. But for me, I think that Gerard Mayo, entrust the defense to do what they're going to do. They feel like the offense is going to take a step forward, and it's probably going to be a little bit of a learning curve under AVP, but then you're going to have a veteran quarterback. And let's be honest, if they had, Jacoby Brissett is not a starting quarterback, but he's a very good backup. And if they had even that level of quarterback play last year, they'd probably win 2 or 3 more games, because there was a lot of 1-score games. So I think they feel confident in where they are right now, and I don't feel like they feel any pressure to put Drake Maye in a situation where he's not prepared. They know they're not a Super Bowl contender this year, and they're going to build towards that goal over the next 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if like Bill Belichick were still around, then there probably would be some more pressure there just because of the whole Mac Jones debacle. Like he would be potentially playing his last season as the Patriots head coach. So there would be that added pressure. But I think it's hard because there's so many people who are split on this. Of course, when you draft somebody number 3 overall, the assumption is they're going to be the starter right away. But as we've seen, even if we're going to look back at Mac Jones and Drake Maye are not the same. So I'm not saying that, but you could argue that Mac Jones maybe shouldn't have started his rookie season, you know, and some people have even talked about Patrick Mahomes. He sat for a year and he got to learn from a veteran. So perhaps somebody like Mac Jones could have benefited from sitting behind somebody for another year. So I could see that being a valid point with Drake Maye because there are people who have such opposite takes on Maye and his potential in the NFL, which I want to ask you, what do you think of Drake Maye's potential? Because there are people who are saying he's the best quarterback of the entire class. I mean, even I guess maybe outside of Caleb Williams, because I think everybody had him as the number 1. But then there are people who believe that he's the second coming of Mitch Trubisky because they both went to North Carolina. They were both quite young and they were not as experienced as the other quarterbacks in the class. I am not a college football connoisseur, so I cannot say whether or not I feel a certain way about Maye or not. I'm always just an optimistic person, so I believe wherever he gets in, he's going to be the best that he can. But I'm curious about your take.
Yeah, man, there's a lot of different ways to take that. So I guess if we're going to drill down on it, it would be like what's Drake Maye's potential? So to me, you know, I want to lay the foundation. Obviously, your listeners, I'm sure there are maybe a few that maybe listen to my podcast.
I'm sure,
but not everybody does. But yeah, you know, and you mentioned it, Patriots 4th and 2. Like Steve and I have talked about Drake Maye probably since like November, if I'm being honest. Like it was very early on. We were looking at the draft process because we knew where the season was heading.
Yep.
And you know, Drake Maye is a person where you have. He comes from there. There's so many great things to like about him. Now, yeah, to your point, is everyone going to like him? Are there negatives? No one's not everyone's going to like everybody. And of course, there are negative traits about him. But if I start with the positives, and I'll keep it super brief because, you know, everybody's talked about, you know, the draft stuff for a while now. But basically, you know, with Drake Maye, you're talking about someone who's, you know, 6'3", 6'4", 220, 230, depending on who you talk to, competitive family guy. You know, he has a competitive mindset, wants to do better, genuinely cares. All the guys in the locker room love him. I've talked to a current player who was a rookie last year in Indianapolis, Josh Downs. I've talked to Tez Walker, who he played with last year. You know, he played with the last couple of years, but I've talked to his receivers, a couple of guys from his line. You know, they rave about him. The coaches rave about him. I mean, this is someone who is going to put his best foot forward. And, you know, I think if he reaches his potential, he'll be a top 10 quarterback in the league. I just think it's going to take a little bit of patience. Right now, they're really focusing on footwork. He had a footwork issue, you know, really most of his career, but specifically more even last year. And just given Alex Van Pelt's offense, they really want to make sure that things are structured a certain way. So they're really trying to work from the ground floor up, which is why they're not in a super hurry, because they know that Jacoby Brissett is someone who's played in the league and someone who's played in this system. So there are a lot of great things about him, and I think people should be excited about it. But I do think it's going to be a slow build. You probably won't see a ton of return this first year, but I think moving forward, it's going to be going the right way.
No, I agree. Like, obviously, I'm someone who is not well versed in his college career, so I can't speak on that. But I did like the video. I don't remember if it was the Patriots that posted it, but you could see the leadership that he has naturally. Like, they're at OTAs and
guys love him.
Yeah, he's already communicating with the receivers and like trying to give them tips and like telling them like what he's going to do, stuff like that. Like that is so important. And that was something that a lot of people criticized Mac Jones for. They felt like he never took over the team, or he just wasn't like that natural leader, whatever critique people wanted to have. And seeing a 21-year-old rookie doing this in the first moments that he has, with his new team, I think that's pretty cool. And to your point about it, people needing to be patient, that is something I've been screaming for the last handful of years, because I think we are so accustomed to the Patriots being ready to go, being championship ready every single season, that expectation is still there. And while that's not necessarily a bad mindset to have, it is when you don't have Tom Brady, when you don't have Bill Belichick, when you don't have all those pieces that made up those teams for so long. So then when you're putting these unreal expectations on a young team, it's kind of unfair. And I always say, it's not just unfair to the players, it's unfair to you. Because then you're sitting there expecting them to be a playoff team or a team that's winning double-digit games or going to the Super Bowl. And it's like, come on, guys. Like, you got to be a little bit more realistic here, because you're just going to set yourself up for disappointment. I think that they've done a great job with who they've added. But like you said, patience is key right now.
Yeah, I think patience is key with Drake Maye specifically, just because, like, I think it's just going to take him, a year or year and a half. I think you'll probably see it within 2 years. But like, I think it's going to take a little bit of time just to basically let him kind of settle in. I mean, this is a new regime, a new offense. He's transitioning from college to pro. He's still a super young guy. It's just going to take a little bit of time before he can kind of put it all together. And I think, and I'm not guaranteeing that it's going to happen, but if it clicks, and I feel confident it will, but I'm not, like I said, I mean, it's not a simple projection, college to pro. Everybody's different, but he has all the tools, and I think he's going into a really good situation. I think some people are downplaying how well of a situation it is. I think after Bill, left the organization, I think they've done a really good job filling out some veterans. Now, someone like a Ben McAdoo or an Alex Van Pelt might not inspire a ton of confidence from some Patriots fans, and I get that. And I have my concerns as well. I will say also that but just because people aren't necessarily head coaches doesn't mean they're bad coaches in general. And if you talk to different people from different organizations that these guys were affiliated with, they're raving about what they can do for these young players. And so I think Drake Maye is actually in a really, really good spot. I just think it might take, I think there's a lot of people who just want like quick results, and it's just not going to be like that. I would be shocked if he started week 1 and like lit it up. Would it be great? Absolutely. Yeah, I know we would both love that. Everybody listening would love that. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I think you're looking closer to like halfway through the season. He'll probably play somewhere between 4 to 8 games. And then you'll see kind of a little bit of what he has. It's going to be a little bit of patchwork, a little bit of like up and down, but you're going to see the arm talent, and you're going to see a lot of his good traits shine through, but you're going to see some of his struggles too, his inconsistencies, and things like that. But he's a young kid who's eager to learn, who by all accounts, his coaches just absolutely love him. I think it's going to be a really good fit in the long term.
I think so too. And I like to reference like the Texans, for example, like they've had the longer rebuild, and then look at what happened last year, and that was a quarterback in a much different situation, just because they were further along in the rebuild. They actually built around the quarterback, and then they just plugged the quarterback in. But I do think the Patriots have done a pretty good job about building around Drake Maye even before he was on the team. I think some of their re-signings were great. I feel like for the most part, outside of the blockbuster trade, and we'll get to that in a second, that they did do, that everyone was hoping that they were going to do for a receiver or left tackle, whatever it is. The re-signings and free agency were top-notch, in my opinion. I was a huge supporter of Kendrick Bourne staying. I'm very glad that they kept Hunter Henry. Like, these are solid pieces that are going to benefit Maye.
Micah Wenyu, Christian Barmore, Kyle Duggar. I mean,
Yes.
they've done a really good job. Like
Yeah.
I think, and maybe it's me putting my Patriots hat on a little bit too much. Okay, but I really am a fan. I think basically the priority's been, and I didn't mean to cut you off, by the way.
That's
But
okay.
like
That's okay.
I really do feel like this regime has placed an emphasis on re-signing guys that they feel like need to be rewarded for the locker room, because it was a kind of a weird time. And I the last couple of years, I just think there was like a transition period, and we can dive into that if you want to, but essentially like post Brady and like before Bill was, let go, let's call it what it is. Like it was a very weird couple of years, and they were like treading water. And I think the new regime was like, you know what, we need to go ahead and reset here. And we're going to reset by re-signing some of our good players, making sure we put an emphasis on who we're going to go and have a clear direction and kind of just go for it. And I think this year, I honestly think this offseason, outside of maybe one or two things, I think they knocked it out of the park. Like they really did.
That's how I feel too. And I get people's disappointment with, they didn't trade for a T. Higgins, which is still possible. We'll talk about it. But they didn't make these big blockbuster trades that they were hoping for because they had so much cap space. But they kept the people who have been the biggest reasons for their success over the last few years. Or, there was this whole issue with Belichick not keeping his draft picks beyond the rookie contract. So that is something that we know Elliott Wolf likes to do. He likes to draft and continue to, build them up and keep them on the team. So
they've been really transparent. They've been really transparent. They said going into the draft that they wanted to take a quarterback, a receiver, and a tackle. Well, those were their 3 first picks in the draft. They said they wanted to draft and develop. They rewarded Mike Onwenu, Kyle Duggar, Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, and
Barmore.
Christian Barmore, thank you. I'm sure I'm forgetting 1 or 2 more. They kept on Hunter Henry. They have done exactly what they said they were going to do, and I think there is value in that, especially in that locker room. Because I can tell you, pretty confidently that I don't think Kyle Duggar would have been a Patriot after this year if Bill was still here. I think that the market would have outplayed Bill's value, like in his mind. I think Mike Onwenu would have been here. Like, I think that's a move he would have made. But like the Christian Barmore thing, he didn't necessarily break the bank. But like, I'm not sure some of these moves are being made. And basically what Elliott and Gerard said was like, you know what? We have a core here. And yeah, the team wasn't great last year, but they have some really good players. And if we can retain the core and we start putting together consistent drafts, we can build this thing back up again. It's just going to take a little time. And I think that they deserve a lot of kudos for that, because I think they have done what they needed to do to this point, in the offseason. And I think Patriots fans should be excited about it, honestly.
And I think we should also acknowledge that I think for the most part, they've done what the fans wanted.
I know, isn't that kind of weird?
Yeah, and that's why it's funny that there are so many people complaining about it. I'm like, you wanted a quarterback at 3, you wanted them to take receivers, you wanted them to take offensive tackles. They literally picked 7 out of their 8 picks on offense.
Which is what everyone thought they should do and they needed to do, and they did it. So it's honestly on us.
I know, and it's crazy.
It's honestly on us.
Yeah, I'm like, guys, this is the first time that I think we can collectively sit together, and maybe you don't love every single pick that they had, but they picked everything that we were like, okay, these are the biggest holes. Let's fill them. So speaking of the rosters, and we alluded to it a little bit because we're talking about free agency and trades. So there are people who are still hoping for a few trades. I think for the most part, at least I am. I'm sure others are as well. Paying attention to the T. Higgins situation, maybe Brandon Ayuk's situation. I'm dabbling a little bit in seeing what's going on with Justin Jefferson, which isn't a whole lot, but dreams, I keep them alive.
Keep dreaming.
Yeah. So there are trades. There aren't a ton, I would say, of free agents that really pique my interest outside of maybe Stephon Gilmore, but I'm curious what you would love to see. Do you want to see trades? Do you want to see signings? What do you want?
Are you talking? Okay, let's can we put some classifications on this? Are we talking about like for this season, future team building? what fan Derek wants, or what I really want to see, or what I think will happen, I should say?
I would say for this season, because they still have $50 million in cap space even after the Javon Baker signing this morning.
Yep.
So there are still some trades that can get done before the season, a few signings. So let's talk about just 2024 for right now.
Okay, so I think right now, if I had to think about it, I think the receiver room is better than what it was. I don't think the room is bad. I do think they're missing the cherry on top, which I don't think will come until next season. I'm sorry. Okay. but I think that will come next offseason. Okay. I really do. And we'll get to that.
Okay.
I think right now I'd like to see one more pass rusher and one more boundary corner. And then I'm still kind of curious about the left tackle situation. We'll see. I think that Chuck's Okorafor would be the left tackle if the season started right now. I'm not sure that's a great season-long solution. I also will be talking to Christopher Price in about an hour from the Boston Globe on my podcast, and he talked about Calvin Anderson, who I do think is a little bit of a forgotten piece because he was signed to be a left tackle and he played like crap at the beginning of the year, and then he had this medical issue. Well, Christopher wrote that he had malaria. He contracted malaria last year, and he literally almost died. Yeah. And I don't think that's like a great like long-term solution, but I do think that it's something that should be considered for at least 2024. So like I do think that he could be in the mix for that. So I'm curious what Chris says on our channel, in an hour from now. But for me, I still am concerned about left tackle. Like I said, pass rusher, I think we could use an extra body, boundary corner, and receiver is definitely in the conversation. To me, I'm telling you right now, I'll give it. I don't know if I've even said this on my podcast. I might have, but I'll give it to your listeners first. All right, I will put my best money on them taking a left tackle next year in the first round. The Patriots there's 4 really, really good prospects. They're likely going to be a top 10 team, even if they're a better team than they were last year, which I think they could be more competitive and still not necessarily have a great draft pick.
Right.
I think they're building in the right direction, but I think they're going to take a top 4 left tackle next year, and I think they're going to trade for a receiver next year. I just think those are the last 2 pieces. They did what they needed to do. They weren't going to be able to address all their needs in one offseason. So I think that's the direction they're going to go. As far as like trades and signing that make sense, signings for me, I would say I think the next extension that's done is probably Ramondre Stevenson. I'm not a huge running back that's a second contract guy, but I think he does so many things in and out there. If they're continuing the trend of rewarding veterans, I think he makes sense on a 2 or 3 year contract to get some money, probably $4 or $5 million a year if I had to guess. And the next one after that, man, trades. Okay, you put me on the spot a little bit. Trades. I see. Here's the problem I have with, and I want to get your thoughts on this too. I'm gonna Uno reverse card you a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
The problem with trading a second round pick, you can't really give a first round draft pick either this year, which they obviously used already, but like, you know what I mean? Like this year or next year. The problem with it is that it's going to be a top 10 pick. Like you give a top 10 pick for like Justin Jefferson, you're not going to necessarily give it for T. Higgins.
Right.
And it's like the Bengals are not quite at the point where they're ready to give up, like a high second rounder, but like you're also going to have to trade a second rounder and then draft T. Higgins like for like a 4-year, $100 million contract, 110 or whatever it is. Like it's just not that simple. So there are, and I just don't think the Patriots are quite at that level where they're ready to add that piece. To me, receivers are moving. There's never been better receiver play in the league. Like it is stacked every year. There's so many good players that are coming out, and they're getting $25, $30 million a year. Justin Jefferson is going to get like $35 million a year. He's going to reset the market by like several percentage points.
Yeah.
And we've never seen that. But at the same time, they're also moving at a fast rate too, because not every team wants to move on. I mean, like you think like the Titans wanted to move on from AJ Brown, like they were in a weird spot. Like the Patriots, to me, like that's why I was against adding like Marvin Harrison this year, for example. And I know I'm being long-winded, and I'll wrap it up. But like,
that's okay.
But like for example, like you're number 3 overall. Some people are like, oh, I don't trust the quarterback. Like, let's just take Marvin Harrison. It's really hard to justify paying a receiver $35 million, which is what he signed for today, 35 guaranteed and change, but like 35 guaranteed. It's really hard to justify that when you don't have a great tackle situation, you don't have a quarterback. Like that's really, to me, the piece you add last.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I think next year they focus on tackle in the draft first round, and then trading like a second round pick for whoever it's going to be, Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins or whoever seems to be available. There'll be guys available. Terry McLaurin's a free agent next year. Like that would be a cool fit. Like they have guys on their roster that are good players. They are still missing that top guy. Some people get pushed back on that a little bit because they think that like, oh, the first, like it doesn't, like a top receiver doesn't need to dominate, you know, like your roster. I get that. I'm not saying that, but like Julian Edelman was a number 1 receiver in this offense. So they still need, there's still guys here that Drake May and whoever the quarterback is can lean on, but they still need a little bit more talent there to make them scared, because I still think right now they're in a position where defensive coordinators aren't staying up at night before the games. Scared of game planning. They're just like, okay, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? So that's what they need to figure out next season. Right now, I think it's just starting from the ground up.
Well, and I think that's something that a lot of people wanted anyway. Like I know that, you know, the blockbuster flashy trades that everybody loves, like it's just, I think you just want to see them make a big move, and it seems exciting, and it's more exciting than re-signing Kendrick Bourne, you know. But I think that, you know, a lot of the people who wanted them to pass on a quarterback, or even to trade down and maybe take a Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy, whoever fell, the idea was to build up the offense similarly to like the Texans, I said, to have everything filled out and then just plug the quarterback in after, because everything else was already set, the receivers, the tackles, everything. So that kind of feels like that's what they could do, even though they already have their quarterback. It's like, if you just do it as, you know, you have enough pieces right now, but you then invest in the big significant pieces that you need, you know, like the clear wide receiver 1, the clear starting left tackle. If that's next year, then that's fine. Because then at least Maye would be in his second season, probably already got a few games under his belt this year, and feeling more comfortable in the NFL, that you don't really have to worry about, like, okay, we don't need this right this second. Because I think, like what you said, I think if they do a big trade for a T. Higgins, a Justin Jefferson, a Brandon Ayuk this year, then it seems like, okay, you actually think that you are going to be a playoff contender this year, because like it doesn't necessarily need to happen. My only concern would be who's available next year. So we know you said, Terry McLaurin will be a free agent. As of right now, so would T. Higgins. Justin Jefferson right now, right? He's going to be a free agent. Brandon Ayuk would be a free agent. So a lot of it, I think, depends on what happens there. Because if they all get, they get their contract extensions, they're off the table immediately next year. They're not going to be tradable.
And probably only one of those 4 guys will move, like in all reality.
Yeah. You know and then it's just like, okay, then who do we shift our focus to? Like, then who is the receiver? Like, do we try and make a receiver that is already on the team the clear guy? Do we try to draft him? Do you try to trade for somebody that maybe isn't a Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, whatever, and make him into that guy? Because, you know, people say T. Higgins isn't a clear wide receiver 1. He would be on the Patriots. So there are other players that maybe are interesting that aren't that guy on their current team, but could be on the Patriots. So that, I think, would just be one concern I would have about holding off. Even if everything makes sense this year for them to hold off, it just is like, okay, what's the pool of players that could be traded for next year, if that makes sense.
And I don't think you want to bank on like who's going to be available as like, oh, someone we can go ahead and spend money on. I feel like based on how the regime is, based on kind of the roots of Bill for Gerard and Ron Wolf and the Packers for Elliott, like I feel it seems like they want to be flexible. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're not, yeah, they have $50 million in cap space. I'm sure they're going to use up another 10 million or so before the end of the offseason. But like, they want to have the flexibility. They don't like to be tied down. They want to be able to go ahead. Let's not forget that I think they would have done everything the exact same way in this offseason if they had signed Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley was going to cost them $26 million a year. So like they would have done that. So it's not I don't want to get them in trouble for something that they didn't do. Like it just didn't work out. The player has a choice too. Yeah, they could have spent a little bit more money. The player was from Florida, wanted to stay in Tennessee. Also no income tax. Like it makes sense. Like the Titans and the Patriots are in similar spots.
Yeah.
Like this is not like let's not make it too complicated. You know what I mean? So like they needed to do that in their mind, and the Patriots wanted to stay flexible for them. So I still think they're willing to spend the money. It just if the opportunity arises, you know.
And I think that's a good sign because for the last 20 years we said Belichick doesn't want to spend money. He's not willing to do these trades. Blah 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 blah.
And we don't want to be. You don't want to be desperate either.
Right.
You know?
So, yeah, because you don't want them to spend so frivolously, you know, just because it's like, oh, well, they've got the money so they can. And then it's like, well, then you run into problems later. So I think, yeah, it is a good sign that they are willing to do this. They're willing to spend money by re-signing their talent. But then they've explored options, even if it wasn't successful. They were exploring options to make big trades and to pay these guys because people make it seem like the Calvin Ridley thing was a huge deal. They were $1 million less than what the Titans were giving him. And it would be way less if you include the tax. So it's like, it wasn't, they weren't that far apart, but why would you choose a very expensive state with the tax when you could go somewhere that was virtually the same? You got connections there from your family. It makes sense. I don't think it had anything to do.
It makes so much sense. And by the way, I love Tennessee, so Calvin probably made a good choice.
Right.
I don't hold it against him. I think they tried. I just think I think that they extended themselves. I just don't think they overextended themselves. And they probably looked at it and said, look, he's a good player. He'd be great to have on the roster, but it's not necessarily the most important thing to happen right now. Yeah. And I think that's a good thing. If you look at literally take a step back and look at all their moves, their draft picks, what they've done, like they are putting together. You can see the plan coming together. Whether it will work out or not, you and I will discuss for the next couple of years, whether that works out or not. But like they're not putting themselves in a corner. And I think that's important. They're leaving themselves flexible so they can go ahead and have opportunities to go ahead and strike when the time comes right.
Yeah. Well, and like I've said, I'm going to say it a million times probably. It's exactly what we want them to do. Everything that we have ever wanted Belichick to do, they're doing so far. And then it's like, we're still, some are still complaining. So it's kind of ironic, but it is what it is. So before we get into the game by game stuff, I want to talk about cut candidates because we are going into the summer OTAs, training camp, preseason. It is the summer of cuts. And I feel like there are a few players that are at the top of the list. And I'm curious if our lists are the same.
All right. Give me a couple from your list first. And I promise to you and the listeners that I will go ahead and make sure my list doesn't change just to go ahead and match yours. I want to hear. Just give me a couple of yours.
So my main one's Bailey Zappi. I think he's the odd guy out.
Yep.
I don't love this one because I don't know why, but I just want to give him another chance. But I just like, there's just something. We'll see. But Tyquan Thornton. I don't want him to go necessarily. I want to see what he does because he gained weight and he's been training with some of the other receivers. But just based on who they drafted, who they've brought in, I feel like he could be an odd man out. Same thing, Chad Ryland. Chad Ryland might be on the outside. Depends on how his summer goes. He's still.
I like all yours. I do have a different one for you, which I'm excited about. So we'll talk about that in a second. But
the only other ones I have, Kayshon Boutte, which we briefly talked about. Not even necessarily because of his skill set. We haven't really seen a lot of it. He didn't thrive, but we know there's a lot of other stuff going on with him. So I don't know.
As we talked about off air.
Yes, and then. Not a great contract. I still think he could be okay on the team, but Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he could be on the outside looking in as well.
That's going to be an ownership decision. Yep. I feel pretty strongly about. Obviously I don't know that for fact, but that's going to be a tough one. I mean, you're basically going to your boss, and I know it's basically you have like an owner and then you have like a GM, and basically like Gerard is like your, you know, icto facto like GM for the Patriots. I know he's the coach, but you know what I mean. Like he's kind of running the team, you know, and it's going to be really hard to be like, hey, I know Bill signed JJ to this, but he really doesn't fit. His knee's absolutely gone. He claims he's 100%. He was 60% last year, even though he said he was 100% last year and got in a fight with Karen Garriga, even though she's like the nicest person on the planet. But whatever, different conversation, different day. I don't see him making the team strictly because of the contract, and they have the money to eat it. I think you can. I guess if I had to play devil's advocate and be the pro JJ guy, I would say that it's a very young receiver room on paper, because you have KB, Pop, Jalen, Javon, and maybe KJ Osborne would be probably not quite the lock. The first four would be the lock. KJ's right on that edge where he probably will make the team, but it's not a sure thing. So like maybe you keep Juju just specifically because it's such a young room.
Yeah.
You know, I think you can make that case. I think Chad Ryland's in trouble just given his inconsistency. They signed Joey Sly, who's a veteran, who's, by the way, way more jacked. He announced he's having a kid later in the year, and he posted a picture. I was like, damn, this dude is built.
I know. You know what is weird? I'm gonna show that I'm a girl, but I was like, I've never thought a kicker was so attractive before. But I'm like, we got a hottie in the specialist room.
Keep in your pants.
Pants. Right. I gotta show it sometimes. You know, I gotta show that I'm a girl sometimes. So yeah, no, I was shocked by that too, because I was like, wait a second, why does a kicker need to look like this? But I wasn't mad. You know?
No, he was. I was like, damn, he's pretty built up.
Yeah.
Who are the other two names? I'm sorry, you said it was Bailey and who else?
Oh, I said wrong one.
Who's the second one?
And was it Taekwon?
So I think Taekwon needs to have a very special summer in order to latch around. He's been hurt a lot the last 2 years. He really needs. He did gain weight. I think that will help him, and I think that if he's cut, they'll keep him around on the practice squad. If he makes it through waivers, nobody else is interested.
He should. He seems like
but he has to probably beat out KJ Osborne to make the team. And it's hard because Osborne brings some special teams game to with his presence, and Taekwon doesn't. And usually at the bottom of the receiver and the running back depth chart, you need to have those extra qualities to kind of stand out, and I think he's in a really tough spot.
Yep.
I'm surprised a little bit Bailey's still here. But it's really not a shot against him. I think, honestly, there was so much drama and stress and animosity between the defense and the offense last year. In fact, I can promise you there was. Okay, talking with a couple of the guys.
I don't blame them, yeah.
Like it was a weird situation last year, and it's really nothing against Bailey. Like, I don't think he's a starting quarterback, but I think he's shown that he's won games in the league. He's done good things. Like, so like, I don't want to take that away from him, like, at all. But I think at the same time, if you're the Patriots, don't you just want to start over at that position? Like, just clean that room out and just go like Jacoby, Maye, Milton, and just reset the entire room. Just to get the bad taste out of that locker room's mouth. You know what I mean? Like it's like almost like that has to happen.
Yeah.
So my prediction for Bailey is that he's going to get traded in the preseason, and they'll probably come up to him and ask him for a couple of teams, and they probably won't get more than a conditional 7th, which I know sounds crazy, but I mean you're talking about a mid-late round guy that's won a couple of games that hasn't been great, that it's coming out of a program that hasn't been great the last couple of years. Like, you're not going to get a whole lot for it. So like, maybe you get a 7th round pick and he moves on to New Orleans. I don't freaking know. Whatever it is. I just think it would be good for a reset. Now, I'm not convinced Joe Milton is an actual quarterback either. There's a lot to like about him. He has a ton of physical good traits. He looked like Cam Newton in those rookie premiere photos. I don't know if you saw that.
He's
like,
gigantic.
He stood out. He's an action figure. I mean, he is a big dude, has a huge cannon of an arm. But I don't really think he knows how to play quarterback. So it's like, do they want to build with him? Maybe. Do they feel like they want to go ahead and have a more established veteran in case Brissett gets hurt and Maye's not ready yet? I could be sold into that too. But I don't think either one of them is a lock. But to me, Zappe is... I just have a hard time envisioning them keeping him here strictly almost more for team chemistry more than anything.
Yeah. Well, and you know, to your point about Milton, they drafted him for a reason. Whether or not he ever actually plays quarterback or they somehow convince him to switch to tight end, which he...
But you're throwing a dart at the dartboard too. You know what I mean? Like you're if you're going to draft somebody in day 3, I've talked to a couple of people about this, you know, specifically when I was on the beat, when I was doing a lot of like in-depth research stuff, like when you draft someone on day 3, you want to draft someone who has an elite trait.
Yeah.
Like they're there for a certain reason, whether it's injuries or size or whatever it is. But like with Milton, it makes sense. Like he has an elite arm, but like, can he harness it?
Yeah.
I don't know if he ever will. I would put my money on probably not. But like, if you're going to take a throw at, you know, if you're going to take a swing at the apple, throw with the dartboard, however you want to phrase it, yeah, I'll take it with that guy who's 6'6", 230 and has a cannon. Like, let's do it. Like, see what happens.
And he'll be fun to watch. And I mean, and you know, similar to what you said about Maye, like he is in a good spot to try and figure out if he can harness what he has and if he can build upon that and improve, because I think he's quite aware that he fell to the 6th round, possibly could have fallen below that. So people do not view him as a starter. So if he's not with the Patriots, he's not going to be a starter somewhere else. He's going to be plugged in as a backup, and that could be a fine career. Backup quarterbacks make a lot of money and they don't ever have to play a game. So
look up Chase Daniel's career earnings, and you'll convince yourself to hold the clipboard.
I know, right? Wasn't it like Sam Bradford also made a ton of money too, or something? I forget.
Well, yeah, that was also partially because, part of it was because he was the first overall pick before they put the rookie, like, what do you call it? Like the template of like the rookie contracts. Before they put all that in motion, he was the first overall pick, so he made a friggin' killing.
No one's better at it though than Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins is the bag getter.
Yeah. The way he can manipulate a team into believing he is the second coming of Tom Brady and to give him the bag, man. I want to know who his agent is, because I need them to work for me. Can you like negotiate my salary? That would be awesome.
Yeah, both of us, hopefully together, you know.
Yeah. So speaking of the season a little bit, let's go to the game by game. So I did write about this, which if you are watching, listening, whichever, don't forget to check out mustgetfire.com. Got a bunch of stuff about the schedule, and I'm probably a little bit more optimistic than most people. I think I had them at like, oh my gosh, I think I either went 11-6 or 9-7, somewhere between there.
Sarah,
I know. But I think that it's like, so I am overly optimistic, but I also feel like they're going to be better than they were last year. I know a lot of people think that they're not, but I would like to believe they're going to win more than 4 games. You can't convince me that they're going to win 4 or less. I'm just not.
I think I'm telling you right now, I haven't done this. I keep cutting you off, and I apologize, but like, okay. I have not done this with either on my show with my co-host Steve Balsherry. I haven't done this by myself. So we are going to go through the whole season schedule together for the first time. But I'm telling you right now, they're probably going to win 7 or 8 games.
That's fine with me.
But I think 11 is ridiculous.
I know. I'm sorry. I don't even know how I got there. Like, I was at 9-7, and then I was re-looking at my list and I counted it, and I was like, wait, how did I give them 2 more games? And I was like, you know what? I don't care. At this point, whatever. It's on brand. I'm just gonna keep it at 11-6, and I had people mad, but it is what it is. So we have week 1 at the Bengals. I feel like it's pretty easy. This is a loss.
So I'm going to surprise you here. After all that I said, I actually think that I think it will be a loss, and I'll count it as a loss, but I think this is actually a sneaky win for the Patriots, and I'll tell you why on 2 fronts. Okay. I think for one, because Joey Burr won't have played for over a year at this point. And we'll see what kind of rust he has. He might come out just like gunslinging, they're whatever. But they lost Joe Mixon, they lost Tyler Boyd, and then Joey was hurt all last year. The Patriots, people don't really know how to game plan for them. Just as we are going in for the draft, it's similar to going to the season. We think Gerard Mayo and DeMarcus Covington are going to have a very similar defense, but we don't know what changes they're going to make. I think they're going to be a slightly more aggressive. I think they're going to go a little bit more into a 4 or 5 man front, and we can probably get to that at a different time or next time I'm on. But I think that the defense, you don't quite know what it's going to be. The offense, you really don't have any idea what it's going to be. And then you have someone on the other team who lost some major pieces on offense and who are coming off injury. So I think the Patriots have a really good chance of winning these first 2 games. Even though I'm not super optimistic about the rest of the year. I do think the Bengals are going to win this game. I would count the Bengals as a win on, we're recording this May 24th, but I do think this is a sneaky upset candidate early, if I'm being honest.
I see what you're saying, and I kind of have felt that way too, because I think the first month is kind of a crapshoot. No one is playing their best football. Everyone is kind of just trying to get settled, trying to figure their own team out and trying to figure out other teams. And so teams can take advantage of that. They can take advantage of being more gelled than their opponents, and they can sneak it out. So I could see that happening. It's the first game, especially. That would be one heck of a way to start the season if they got one against the perennial AFC favorite, outside of the Chiefs anyway.
So I'll count week 1 as a loss.
Okay, I got that down. So
but I am telling you, that is my sneaky upset, my hot season mid take.
I hope you're right, because that would be awesome. So we have week 2 versus the Seahawks. I put this down as a win because I think the Seahawks are in a weird position as well. They're going to have a new head coach. We're not really sure what they're doing at quarterback. Obviously, they have solid receivers and, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, who's Mr. Reliable. I mean, is he still there? Well, he's still there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Kenneth Walker is great when he's healthy. But again, we don't know what they're going to look like either. So it's their first home game. I think they're going to be extra excited. And I think this could be, as you said, a game that they could easily sneak out the win.
So if they don't win week 1, I think they're going to win week 2. So to be fair, I think they're going to win this game. If I'm going to say the loss for the Bengals, I'll say a win against the Seahawks. Okay. There are challenges. I do agree with everything that you said. You're going to have some good skill position players. You're going to have a good running back. The quarterback position for them is really interesting. McDonald, the head coach, coming from Baltimore, he likes to be really, really, really multiple. So I'll be curious to see what that looks like. But I'll say win. If I said lost the first game, I'll say win this game. I think that they'll split one of these first 2 games.
Yeah. Agreed. And then we got their first divisional game, week 3 at New York Jets. Also their only primetime game, Thursday night.
As of now.
Yes, yep. As of now. I have this as a loss simply because it's at New York. We're supposed to believe that Aaron Rodgers is a god. So if that's the case, then he'll play like one at home.
He'll tell you.
Yeah. He sure will, in a lot of more words, I'm sure. But yeah, I think that the division is not the division of old. And unfortunately for the Patriots, they've all gotten better while they've gotten worse. So I see the Jets playing hard, especially with Rodgers back in the lineup.
As long as Rodgers stays healthy, they're going to be at least on the verge of the playoffs. I mean, there's just no way about it. No 2 ways about it. They have a pretty good offensive line. They have a good running game, good weapons, really good defense. I'm not sure I'm super confident in Robert Saleh, aside from the defensive side. But I do think he has a relatively good head on his shoulders. I think it will be a loss. I think it's going to be a really, really tough team. They'll probably end up splitting with the Jets, but I think that the first one's going to be a tough one, and they are really, really stacked top to bottom. They've done a great job in the draft, and we'll see if they can put it all together this year.
don't they have like 3 or 4 running backs too? They drafted was it them that drafted Braylon Allen and Isaiah
Braylon Allen,
Davis?
who I loved coming out of Wisconsin. I think he's a great compliment to Breece Hall. I think the two of them are just going to run like the wind. Garrett Wilson's done a good job of doing what he can do. Just like they literally have just done a really good job building that roster.
Yep.
I think, honestly, their biggest question marks in my mind are their head coach and their quarterback. Because I think
Agreed.
their quarterback is a total, as good as talented as Aaron Rodgers is, there's a reason he's only won once. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the most talented quarterbacks that we've seen probably since John Elway. And I mean, like from a physical standpoint, he's just as impressive as like a Tom Brady, but like he doesn't have that mentality. But
right.
like I think I'm not blaming last year on him. That was just bad luck. And honestly, it kind of sucked to see because I just don't like rooting for guys to get injured. You know, like even though I'm not a fan of him, I don't want him to be hurt. That's not fair. Like that's BS. So like I'm kind of curious to see how that all comes together, you know, and maybe it won't because I was just talking to my buddy who's a huge Packers fan, and we were joking about how the Bears have done a good job, but the Bears, so they'll screw it up. They're the Jets. They'll probably screw it up. Like
the Jets will jet.
You know, they'll probably do that. But at the same time, I am curious to see if they can put it together this year.
I am too, and I'll move on in a second, but I'm curious because they're a team that seemed to have given Rodgers a lot more say in their roster moves and free agency because they've brought in a bunch of his friends. So, you know, that is something that he kind of did not like with the Green Bay. So it's like, it'll be interesting to see if like everything that he was helping to bring to the Jets actually pays off because it's what he wanted and they did what he wanted. So it'll be like,
you know, a lot of teams do that. And I can tell you with, you know, pretty good certainty that, you know, Drake May wanted Jalen Polk, for example. Like that was a player that he really, really liked. So like, it's not too out of the ordinary, you know, to do that. I just think, I don't know. Aaron's a different kind of animal. Like it's a little different. But I just wanted to bring a little bit of balance to it because I am with you 100%. But at the same time, I'm just like, okay, well, a lot of quarterbacks want to bring in their own receivers, and that's what they want to do. So
week 4, I think this is obvious at the 49ers. I mean,
yeah, it's going to be brutal. The first 4 schedule. I mean, the first 7 really. I mean, you're talking about Joe Burrow. All of a sudden, you can skip the Seahawks, but you got Aaron Rodgers. I know it's Brock Purdy, but you still have a really stacked lineup. You got Tua, you got C.J. Stroud. I mean, you are really just walking through it. You're walking through the coals at the beginning. But yeah, it's a loss, you know, in my mind. So right now we're at 1-3. I just think the 49ers are so loaded. We'll see if they can get over the hump. You know, I'm not sure if they can. But right now on paper, I mean, man, they're one of the best teams. Even though the AFC is probably 3 times more loaded than the NFC, the 49ers are still one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the league. I mean, they're really talented.
They are. Week 5 is versus the Dolphins. I think I had this down as a win. I think I have them splitting all of the AFC. I don't think anyone is going to. I'm sorry, AFC East. I don't think I had any of the teams sweeping the Patriots.
In my mind, they'll probably win 2 out of the 6 games they play.
Okay.
Maybe not 3. We'll see. I think that they have a good chance of beating Miami at home. I would feel better if it was later in the year because Miami, the best way I've heard Miami classified was from Chris Long, who has a really good podcast called the Greenlight Podcast. And he compared the Dolphins to an F1 race car. And basically was like, if the track is clean, you know, they can just basically beat you out with speed, and they can. And you've seen that. You know, you're playing October 6th, so it's not super cold. You know, I would like that game a little bit later. Maybe there's some weather involved. You can muck it up a little bit. We'll see. It'll be really hard to kind of beat them. I have that as a loss as well.
Okay, so that's where we differ for the first time.
Yep.
Week 6 versus the Texans. I have it as a loss. I think that the Texans they were really good last year. They're going to be only better this year. It's great that they're coming to Foxborough, but I just don't know how. As much as I love the Patriots defense, I'm just a little concerned about how they would be able to shut down that explosive offense.
So I actually have this as a win. I think the Texans. I think the Texans are going to be a good team. I do think the expectations for them are getting a little lofty. I do think the C.J. Stroud hype is real, and there's a lot of good things to go about it. D'Amico Ryans, etc. But like, I do think that maybe they had a little wind in their sails, and I wouldn't be surprised if they took a slight step back. They could still get to the playoffs and have some success. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But like, I could see a slight step back because I feel like some of the expectations might be overstepping what they actually did last year. Mm-hmm. I do think people have to realize that it was still just freshly coming out of a rebuild, and they surprised people last year. So I don't think it's that stupid to say that this year it might be a little bit slower out of the gate than some people are expecting.
And they play in a dome, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could play to the Patriots' favor too, because that is in mid-October in the cold. Week 7 is the game in London against the Jags. I think I have them as a win. I think playing London. Go ahead.
Can I ask you? Can I ask you? Do you have any interest in ever going to see a game there?
It's so funny. So I was thinking about going to the Jets game week 8 because it's at Foxborough. And it's 3 days before my birthday. So because the Jags game is the week before, people were like, why don't you go to London for your birthday? And like, you can go see the game. And I'm like, I would love to if it wasn't going to cost me an arm and a leg. So like, it would be really fun. Yeah. I think it's like such a different dynamic because it is such a unique blend of fans because, you know, they don't have American football in England. So I think it would be like a really cool experience.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be really fun. I would like to go.
Yeah.
So you say win or loss? I'm sorry.
I say win because I think that since they're, you know, the Jags are kind of becoming London's team, but it is such it's a melting pot of fans. The people that are going to be at this game are not Jags fans necessarily or whoever else, you know, they're playing. It's going to be, we're NFL fans. This is one of the games we get to see in London this year. We're going to go. And I don't know. The Jags lost a lot of people and I'm not like overly, you know, excited with the people that they added. So I think that the Patriots could get this win.
So I'm going to say win as well, which would put me at 3-4 so far, which is a little surprising. It will get worse. Sorry. But I'm actually really excited to see what kind of crowd this is. Jacksonville and New England both have a ton of fans on the other side of the pond. So I think it'll be really interesting to see, you know, how that whole thing plays out. But I do think the Patriots, the Jags, I think the Jaguars had a bad year last year, and I think they'll rebound. I just am curious to see how that whole matchup is. On balance, the Patriots have played up against the Jags pretty well. You know, I know it's different coaching stuff, but pretty well the last, I don't know, 2 decades or so. So I feel confident in that game, and I think there'll be more Patriots fans really than the Jags fans, but it'll be curious to see like how that finds out. And Trevor Lawrence is next up. Speaking of quarterbacks getting paid, he'll be here shortly.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too because I think the 2021 quarterback class was not great. So it'll be interesting if he's the only one who gets an extension. You know,
humbling. As for someone like myself who loves the draft, it was a very humbling experience because you're really looking at really one out of the top 4 or 5 guys. I mean, that really panned out. And for someone, I'm not Mel Kiper, I'm not Todd McShay. I don't, you know, I'm not saying that, but I pay attention to it quite a bit, and just surprising how much that backfired. But it shows you how much of a dart throw it really is. It's pretty crazy.
It kind of goes back to what we were saying about Drake Maye. Like you never really know, but you got to take a shot, you know? Right. So week 8, they play their second game against the Jets at Gillette. Because I have them splitting the season, I have this as a win. Am I confident in that? No. Is it my optimism? Absolutely. So I'm like, I do not want to concede to the Jets sweeping the Patriots. I can't do it. I just can't. My brain says no, absolutely not. So
I'm with you. I'm with you on that last part, but I'm gonna say loss. I mean, I look at these next 3 games. You're talking about the Jets, the Titans, the Bears. I could see them winning all those games, but the reality is they're not that team, so I just think the Jets match up with them well right now. And will it last? No, I don't think so. But right now, I have them losing, so I have 3 of 5.
Okay. And then we got the Titans, as you said, at Titans, week 9, which is going to be a very interesting game because they have a whole totally remade offense, a new head coach, really great receivers, an interesting quarterback he's the one that likes mayo in his coffee, correct?
Yeah,
that's what he's gonna be known for. Didn't he get like a lifetime supply of mayo or something like that?
Yeah,
like
from
Mahomes got Heinz ketchup.
Yeah.
Crazy. I actually don't remember if I said this was a win or a loss. But I think I said win, probably because I said 11 wins.
I'm gonna say win. I'm gonna say win here because Tennessee, to me, their defense still has a lot of question marks. I like Will Levis. He was a little up and down last year. Decent receivers, decent offensive line, first-time head coach. I don't know. I think the Patriots are still going to be a bottom quarter of the league team just because they're going to be building. But I still think they beat teams like this who are, in my mind, below them. So yeah, I have them taking the win here.
Then they go on the road again to the Bears. I have it as a loss simply because of how good of a draft the Bears had, and the way that they've just built their roster. I mean, it's like incredible what Caleb Williams is walking into. So, since it's on the road, I have it as a loss.
Yeah, so I mean, the Bears and the Falcons will be really interesting case studies just because of how they built their teams. I think the Falcons roster is far along than the Bears, but they both put a lot of weapons around him and then dropped the quarterback in last. For the Falcons, it was free agency with Kirk Cousins, and for Caleb Williams and the Falcons, it was the first round pick they put into it. I think that will be really, really fascinating to see how that whole thing works out. But I do think it will be a loss. I think that JJ McCarthy and Caleb Williams have the two best rosters around them to be successful early on. We'll see where that goes, but I do think that the Bears probably get this one. If I'm being honest, and I give if they lost to the Titans, maybe they could beat the Bears. And I know it's not transitive property necessarily, but I don't expect them to win all these games. So I'm going to say a loss with you. I agree.
Then we have week 11 versus the Rams. I have it as a win.
The Rams are interesting, right? Like, I feel like they're kind of like almost not really discussed. Like,
yes,
the biggest news for the Rams this offseason was the fact that they actually had a first-round draft pick and that Aaron Donald retired. Like, there's really not a whole lot going on. But like, what's Matthew Stafford's status? Like, I don't know. And there's been a lot of moving parts on that offense that have kind of gone under the rug. I'm going to say a win as well. I think that they absolutely are a team. I would say they're probably one of the hardest to predict teams as of mid-May right now. Like, what are they going to be? It's really, really hard to say. But right now, I just don't see them. I see them being competitive because I like their coaching staff, and I think Sean McVay is a good coach. But like, I don't really know what they're going to be.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's going to play to their benefit, but it's still super early in the off season. So there's still time to see kind of like what they're up to. Then we got week 12 at the Dolphins. I think we can both say this is an L. Miami is cursed. No one is above Miami's curse. It is what it is.
The only time I've ever been to Miami was Antonio Brown's first and only game with the Patriots.
Man, I didn't have any way to watch that game, so I found a stream and like set it up in my living room, like had my laptop on a book, like on the table. Like, I wanted to watch that game so bad because it was like unreal that was real. And then it lasted one game. I think it was 8 days. It was such a bizarre period of time. But I was there in the stands for that game. You and I both have spent a lot of time in Arizona. The hottest sun I've ever experienced was that pregame in Miami. It was brutal.
Like it was so strong. The UV rays were outrageous.
And it's on the visitor side, right? Like that's where the roof is not covering mostly.
So that's the way. Yeah, it's Hard Rock Stadium. That's the way they design it, so that the visitor's sideline is in the sun, and it's about 20 degrees warmer than the home side, and it is real. It is crazy. But yeah.
Then the week 13 versus the Colts. I have it as a win. Did I have it as a win?
Super confident there.
I know. I'm like, I can't remember because I did it like when the schedule came out. So I'm like, I think I had it as a win, even though, Anthony Richardson is expected to be back. They re-signed Michael Pittman. Like they have some good pieces, but Richardson is coming off of a season-ending injury. And it's the Colts. The Patriots have historically been really good against the Colts, no matter who is there. And I just feel a little bit more confident in this game no matter what. Like I think the Patriots defense is definitely going to continue doing what they did last year, and I think they could definitely wreak some havoc on the Colts offense.
So I also have this as a win. I do think overall that they are a better team. Anthony Richardson will be the determining factor in whether this is their correct pick or not, because if he kind of transforms and develops into the player that a lot of people think he's going to be, then it probably won't happen. But if he is still kind of working out some kinks because he did have his rookie season cut short because of injury, then maybe we're having a different conversation.
Then you were just talking about Arizona. That is when week 15 after their bye, they will play the Cardinals. I have it as a dub.
I do too. I have this as a win as well. Probably the last one of the season, which is what I'll predict here in a second. But I think that Jonathan Gannon did a really good job of kind of coaching the team. You could see them playing really hard for him. The defense was really working, towards some things. We'll see what the offense looks like. Kyler Murray was obviously hurt a lot last year, so we'll see how that whole thing goes. But I think on balance, the Patriots are still probably better than the Cardinals. I'm sure some would disagree, but I just think that they're both in similar places. So it'll be curious to see at this point of the season. Obviously, we're talking about week 15, like where they are in their trajectory. So like, are the Cardinals playing for a playoff spot, or the Patriots? Probably not neither, but I think that those kind of things could matter.
And historically, they start the season really well and end the season really bad. So that always works to play them late.
Absolutely.
I think we agree without even much explanation. Week 16 at Buffalo, that's a loss.
It's so weird. I agree with you. I won't even spend much time talking about the actual game itself, but it's so weird seeing the Bills playing them twice at the end of the year. I think that's so weird the way they put things together. Like, the Patriots playing in Wembley, in London, not having a bye week afterwards, not having a bye week till 6-7 weeks later, and then all of a sudden playing the Bills twice at the end of the year. Really, really bizarre. Defensively, the Bills are going through a huge change. I think that Sean McDermott is absolutely on the hot seat for the season. I think that he's in a whole lot of trouble if they don't do really well. You go ahead and you change both your safeties. You lose your top cornerback. I understand age, injuries are a factor, of course. Matt Milano's coming back, but you have a lot of change on the. What's up?
Traded Stephon Diggs also.
Yeah. So you change a lot of people in the back end. Offensively, you lose Gabe Davis to the Jaguars. Stephon Diggs, you trade to the Texans. What's that going to look like? I think they're having a little bit of a reset year, but I really do think that if they do not probably get past the divisional round, I think McDermott's gone. Yeah. And I have a scary feeling that Bill Belichick would be on that phone call for right after that.
Oh, jeez. Oh, I don't even want to think about that. Oh, okay. Week 17 versus the Chargers. I believe you said that this will be a loss. I have it as a win.
I think the Patriots have traditionally done really well against the Chargers.
Yes.
It feels
and they have a lot less pieces on that offense than they had in the past when the Patriots played really well against them. So I think that will be a big plus for them.
We'll see where the teams are, but I think part of it for me is that the Chargers are probably still pointing up towards the playoffs, and I'm not sure the Patriots will be in that position. So I could see one team maybe playing a little harder than the others,
Yeah.
and so maybe that's a little unfair, but that's kind of how I see it going.
Well, I mean, it's week 17. I think it's fair to say that.
Right.
And then they end the season against the Bills, and sticking to my optimistic brain that will not allow the Patriots to be swept by anybody in their division, I have them winning at home against Buffalo.
So I have them losing. I just have a hard time believing that they can outgun Josh Allen, even if the receiver room is taking a step back from them. I will be fascinated too, and let me take a step back. Part of me feels like Drake Maye probably steps in for these last 6 to 8 games, I'll call it. And if that's the case, you're playing the team who is a pretty good team in the Bills that you're playing 2 out of 3 weeks. They probably are going to pick up on some tendencies, So if I'm being fair and I take a step back, I can see it happening that way. I'm going to call it a loss.
Okay, so I think I was 11-6, and I think you are 7-9. So let's just look there somewhere between there. That would be fine. Yeah. As long as it's not below 4, I'm good. As long as they look a little bit better. And that's the thing too. As we said, we have to be patient, but as long as they look like they're getting better and they're moving forward, then I feel like you can take the season as a win.
1,000%. And I think people need to realize this, and I don't mean to lecture anybody. Everyone can feel the way they want to feel, okay? But like what I would tell you is that you really just want to see the young players progressing. Let's see Marcus Jones get back on the field and stay healthy for the season. Let's see Christian Gonzalez come back healthy and pick up where he left off. Let's see Pop Douglas build on season 2. Let's see Jalen Polk and Javon Baker go ahead and make some plays as rookies. Even if Drake Maye doesn't start right away, if he comes in and he maybe throws a pick or 2, okay, that's fine. Is he throwing? How does he look like throwing the ball? Like I want to see some of these things. Can Caden Wallace get into the lineup? What does the defense look like under Gerard Mayo? Like I think that there are a lot of things that people can be excited about, even if it doesn't necessarily translate to wins. I do think that they're on the precipice of coming for that, back to the division contention, back to the playoffs. I just think they're still a year or 2 away, and they're building, but I think they're making the right moves.
I agree. I could not have said it any better myself. So first, I just want to say thank you, Derek, for joining me today. And plug yourself. Whatever you want to plug, go for it.
Honestly, I would just say myself and Steve Balsherry, Russ Goldman. It's been mostly Steve and myself the last year, but Russ is still involved. We have a podcast called Patriots 4th and 2. We record it pretty much every Wednesday at noon Eastern. I've been doing it for 13 years. I've been continuing my coverage over at patsfans.com, run by Ian Logue, who's the best. Got me involved and started doing everything when I was covering the team, like early on, like 10-12 years ago. And then my Twitter feed's right here at Patriots Haven. I mean, I'm good for any good sports debate, or conversation. Sarah will tell you. Really not a whole lot to plug, but I appreciate you having me on, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Make sure you guys go follow him, check out his stuff, and don't forget to check out musketfire.com. Subscribe, like, share the videos. We want to build this channel more to have a great Patriots community. And until I see you next time, have a great long weekend. And don't forget, go Pats. Bye, guys.